Welcome to our brand new self-publishing path webinar. I'm waiting for Carolyn to join us, and she hasn't. Oh, there she is. Hang on just a minute. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Carolyn.
Hi, Pat.
Hello.
Nice to see you, Patricia.
Patricia Rose. Okay, so I'm Patricia Rose Upczak, and I love to write. Over the years, I have discovered a key of happiness for me. Now, it's not necessarily the key of happiness for everybody, but it is for me. No matter where I am or no matter what I'm doing, if I can go find a bit of time to curl up and write in my journal or write on one of the many projects. I have a bag and I carry all these writing projects with me, and I just pull out one and I start working on it. My energy shifts and it expands, and I feel connected to the energy of who I really am. And then I know that the rest of it will take care of itself. And that's pretty much how I feel about this webinar, because I will tell you that self-publishing, first of all, I have to tell you, I never intended to self-publish anything, but I'm old and I've been around a long time. And probably 25 years ago, some parents, I was a teacher at Fairview High School. It's a big high school down in Boulder. And I was writing, but I hadn't even tried to get anything published, but I just like to write, and I was working on stuff. And one of my favorite students died. He was hit in a car crash, and it was awful. The school was traumatized. I was traumatized. And what happened was that the parents came to me and they asked me to write about his life story. And I said, well, I will write something about Steve. I'll help you put together a book, but I want you and your husband to write down your process without showing each other. And then when you're done, we'll put it together in a book and we'll get it published someplace. And so the parents agreed, but it took them 9 years. And which was fine. And we put together a book. Now, it's not the kind of book I would put together now, myself, but it was definitely something that they needed that helped their process. And it had grieving process list and showed people what the grieving process was. And even had this whole synchronistic story in the back about how the boy that had been hit with a car, that he had taken this little boy under his wing across the street from his house. And to make a long story short, after the boy was hit by a car and killed, he was a big star on the Fairview football team. And the little boy came out and he saw the Sunday paper, and there was Steve's picture. And he said, why is my friend on the front cover of his mother had been the one that had killed his friend? And she thought he just made it up. Well, he hadn't made it up. Steve was helping him. So to make a long story short, when we did put the manuscript together, and I sent it off to a bunch of publishers and got a bunch of rejections, but there was a publisher that was really interested in it in San Diego. And the father was very raw in the manuscript. I mean, he was, needless to say, he was not only heartbroken, but he really kind of ripped a lot of institutions and people around it in his feelings about the way we handle death. And they loved it. I mean, they loved the book. And the father said, well, this is what you have to take out. Well, what I had to take out was most of what he had talked about, and they wouldn't publish it without that in it. So I now had a manuscript, and they said I could have the rights to the book, just not to that part that he had. But it wasn't a very good book, but it was a lovely story. So then I sent it to a woman in New York, and still thinking, the only way I was thinking was like the big publishing houses, because it never even occurred to me to think about starting my own independent or, self-publish anything. I wasn't going to do that. So anyway, I sent it to this woman in New York, and she stayed up all night reading it, crying her eyes out. And she said, and I didn't know that one of her sons had died when he was 30 years old. And she said she didn't even let herself cry. And she said she just bawled. She says, you've got to go start your own company and publish this book. And I'm like, what? Why? And she said, because it's important. It's got good information. So I went into one of the world's biggest learning curves I've ever been in my whole life. And I'm trying to think, it's probably the publishing company next year will be 25 years old, and that's Synchronicity Publishing, LLC. Oh, we should talk about the website, huh? And the website is www those little hashtag things, yeah, and then coincidence, which is COINCIDENCE dash creativity.com. And so anyway, so I went and I, did all the things you're supposed to do, which I didn't realize is that somebody? Oh, it's from Carolyn.
I just popped the URL in the chat so people can see it.
Oh, thank you. And so the thing that's interesting is that what I did was I started on a path that I have to say was extraordinary. I mean, I learned, and one of the things I am is I'm a very good teacher, and I love to teach along with loving to write. And I was a teacher. I started a program at Fairview and back in the late 70s, and they needed a program for learning disabled adolescents, and I said, oh, well, that's what I'm qualified to do. I hadn't planned on starting that kind of program. I just was going to teach in it, but they didn't have one, so I got to start it. But it was wonderful, and the kids were wonderful, and I really liked my job, and I liked teaching. And what I've discovered is then along the road, I became a Reiki master, and because I got involved in Reiki, and then of course, everything I really get involved in, I like to teach. And so I started teaching Reiki, and then I got involved with past lives and with very good people who have since gone to the other side and have left me to do all of that teaching, but that's okay because they're good people. And then I really, the books and stuff that I got involved in, and the conferences and the things, the classes, the stuff that I got to take, and and it's funny because I read these things and they talk about all of these icons of the publishing world and the self-publishing world, and I know them all. I mean, it's Jack Canfield. Yeah, every year I got to sit and talk to him when he would come to the book expo, because I would end up getting to be at these booths, helping or working at these booths where all of these people would show up and start talking, and I learned so much just by being around them and watching what they were doing. And I joined that back then. There was an organization that I absolutely recommend everybody join. Now it's called the Independent Book Publishers Association, which is IBPA. But back 25, 30 years ago, it was PMA, Publishers Marketing Association. And it was, that was the first organization that I joined. And I went to this conference. I went to the book expo, but I didn't have a book and I didn't really know what to do. And so I was going to all of the courses that they have. And I highly recommend it because they still have courses and they have these great conferences that what they have is they have a lot of people. They have a lot of people like me, people who have done a lot of work, who know specific things about how to do different kinds of things, and you get handouts and you go, and it's really very much worth it. And then Carolyn, you and I had talked about that. I used to go to the INATS, which is it's International New Age Trade Show, I think and when I used to go, it was really big. It was huge. It was in the the Denver Mart, I think it is, but I don't know what's going on with that right now. But it filled the whole place up. I mean, it was huge, just enormous, and it was fun. They had authors' breakfasts and they had booths and all kinds of things, and I liked going there. And they had book signings, and it was a good thing to do. And at some point, maybe I'll be going back and doing that. I haven't decided yet. And then we did. And then I got involved with NAPRA and Marilyn McGuire, and she had a magazine, and she had booths, and she was very big, both in the Book Expo and in INETS. And then pretty soon she just got to the point where she couldn't show up at INETS, for example, and so I would just run the booth, and so I got to meet a lot of different authors and people, and they were just really interesting. It was a really good time. And then there was Marilyn and Tom Ross, and they ran SPAN, which was the Small Publishers of North America, and they decided that I should be working at all of their booths, and so I would get to go and do all kinds of stuff, and I met a lot of wonderful people, both people who were really famous and people who weren't really famous, but they were really, it was a good kind of interaction, and you learned a lot. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that it's very important to go to these conferences and network and learn how to interact with all of these different people, because you really learn so much just from being involved with these people. And they all had books, and I read them from cover to cover. And John Kramer's books, I think it's digital, but it used to be 1,001 ways to market your book. And he came out with, I think, a digital format not too long ago, maybe last year, because A, it's cheaper to put it in digital format, and B, because people were more likely these days just to download the whole book than to just, but it was like that thick. I have several copies from downstairs. It's like, oh my goodness. But anyway, so, all right. So then basically what we're talking about is that many famous authors choose to independently publish their work for a variety of reasons. It has only been recently that big publishing houses are the only ones that publish real books. Now, having said that, I will tell you that you have to put a great deal of work into writing your book. And it's very important to put as much energy and expertise into publishing it well. Shoddy work is what has given self-publishing a bad rap as substandard, and it does need to be done right. There are good organizations to join that will guide you and help you with your projects. It's important to read books and take courses in writing and publishing, either online or in person. Go to conferences, either in person or virtual events. The learning curve is steep for all of us at all levels at these conferences, but the courses and the conferences will help you dramatically. And I will say that getting to go to at least some of these conferences, and hopefully that it's opening up a lot since COVID's kind of going away, that it's important to network and get to really interact with all of these different kinds of people, because they really help you. I mean, they do, and they don't help you because it's, oh, let me help you. It's just, if you're wondering about how to do something, they tell you what to do or where to go and how to do it and how to what persons to talk to and things like that. And in terms of new organizations, that the two that stand out right now is like I said, Independent Book Publishers Association, which is IBPA. And also, like, one of the ones I'm going to go to this fall is the Mountains and Plains Trade Show. And it seems to have a spring thing and a fall thing. And Book Expo isn't happening anymore. And that really makes me sad, because I used to go every year and I loved Book Expo. But I think between those two, and then there's other organizations coming up, don't they? Doesn't Independent Book Publishers Association have local chapters, right, Carolyn?
I think they might. I'm not sure, but I know that there is in Colorado, we have the Colorado Independent SIPA Publishers Association,
Yeah,
and they
that's
might
that.
be a subset.
No, they are a subset. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. The other thing that I will tell you that actually the two other conferences that are good to go to is the one that it used to be called the International Reading Association conferences. They've got a new title, but you can find them because I think they had to regroup for whatever reasons. But they have really, what they have is they have these huge conferences and you can get a booth there and it doesn't cost a lot. And all the people that show up are teachers. And what do teachers have in common with writers? They have books in common with writers. And so it's a very good thing to do. The other thing, the other one that really is a very big deal to go to if you can, either to get a booth or just to show up and be able to kind of connect with people and talk to them, find out stuff, is the International Library Association. That's a very, very big conference. And the other part of it is, what do librarians have to do with writers and publishers? Books. And you want to find out how to get your books in libraries. Because, for example, and we were just talking about this, Carolyn, there's two kinds of codes that you can get. And I should have, there's a book downstairs that has the name of it, so I could run down and do it, but I'm not going to. It used to be that years ago, well, it's not, quality books used to have what they called PISA, PCIP, that's it. And it's a library code that you put in the front of your book. Now, it's a different company now, but it's, if you just type in how to put a library code in the front of your book, it'll tell you. If you don't put, you can also get the Library of Congress to put a code in your book. You have to wait for that. And it's a lot more expensive and it's a lot harder and it takes a long time. So just so you know, but you can try to do that if you want to. But what I want you to understand is the libraries cannot take your book if it doesn't have one of those in the front. Because they don't have, that's how they catalog things. Oh, that's what it's called, cataloging, yes, because that's how they catalog all the books in the library. And if there's not a number in there, they can't do it. So then you can't put your books in libraries. You can sneak your book in the library and leave it there like some people tell you to do. But then when they go to check it out, they'll go, oh, this book isn't in our system. Okay. And you also need an international, let's see, what does ISBN stand for? International
Standard.
International Standard Book Number, I think.
I think that's right.
Yeah, but anyways, you have to have an ISBN number and you have to have a library code. And then there's a bunch of stuff that Bowker's does. I think you get your ISBN numbers from Bowker's.
Yes.
And you get like I said, it used to be Quality Books and now it's another organization.
Yeah, the one that I started using is called Cataloging. I just had it and I just lost it. Cassidy Cataloging. I can put that URL in there. They have PCIP services.
Okay, all right.
That seems to work better if you have somebody do it for you.
Yeah,
Than to try to tackle the Library of Congress.
Right, exactly. So she's going to put that in the chat so you guys can see that. That's good. The other thing that I will tell you is that if you decide that if you decide that, like I said, my path was not, I had no intentions of starting my own, and mine is an independent publishing company. It's not considered a self-publishing company, but that's just because I have more than 2 employees. But I never intended to start a company. It was just that was the only way that I could do it. So I did. And I was actually very surprised. It was good for me and I'm glad I did it and I would never take it back. But I was surprised because I'm friends with a woman named Denise Lynn, who's just fascinating. And she got kind of upset when she started to realize that I probably per book made, I made a lot more per book than she did, because, and she even was her last publisher, I guess it still is her publisher's Hay House. And they're very generous, and it's still, you get just a percentage of the price on the book. And that tends to, but they are, supposedly they do all the work, but I will tell you what they do not do in terms of the big houses. And I'm sure that you wouldn't be watching this if you didn't know that, is they don't do any of the marketing anymore. They used to, but they don't now. And so that means that, yes, you write the book, and yes, the book better be edited well, because if it's not, then they will complain, and they are not going to hire an editor. They will tell you to go get the book edited. They will do the cover. So, I mean, that's something that's, and they will do the formatting. So the formatting and the cover they will do. So yes, if I were you, I would, if you're going to go the self-publishing path, then you should get the cover done by a professional. And if you're smart, you should get the book formatted by a professional that knows what they're doing, because otherwise it doesn't look professional. I will tell you a terrible story, but it's a good story, but it was terrible for me. When I wrote, it's back over there, Reiki, A Way of Life, and Synchronicity, Signs and Symbols. It was a printing company that was in Boulder, and because I wanted someplace that I could go so that I could see what they were doing, because I thought by being hands-on that it would make it better. And in the long run, I mean, the books are beautiful, so it's not that, but my editor had a PhD in English, and she was very, very anal. And if she watches this, she's going to say, you better believe I am. And once we went out to lunch, and lemon was spelled wrong on the menu, and she circled it. So I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, what I had put the book into, and I didn't have to format it. But what I had the book put in, they didn't have, it didn't match any of their writing programs. It was a long time ago, and it was one of those Apple writing programs, the first ones that they had, and they just didn't have it. So the printer guy was very nice, and he said, "Oops, if you hear loud banging, it's not me, it's thunder and lightning around my house." Anyway, what they said was, for both books, and I wasn't smart enough to figure it out until the end, till after the books had already been printed, and whatever. So they said, we'll have to reformat it. Okay. They charged me $1,000 for reformatting. I later found out, because when the Reiki book came out, my editor, Polly, just completely lost it. She goes, what is these mistakes were not in the book. I would have noticed these. And there's typos and there's mistakes in the book. And reformatting means that they had somebody sit down and retype it into their program. And I didn't figure that out until, well, the Synchronicities, both the Reiki book and the Synchronicity, both of them actually still sell, which is fascinating to me, because they're like 20 years old. I mean, it's, and they're both really good books, but it would be nice if there weren't any typos. And so there were some typos and things, and that my editor didn't see. So make sure, because the other thing that I learned, like I said, I've learned most of my things from experience, is that when they send you a proof, and you're supposed to go through that proof with a fine-tooth comb. I'm what they call a divergent thinker, as opposed to a convergent thinker. Convergent thinkers, they give you, like a teacher will ask a question. And if it's in a math class, they ask a very specific question looking for one answer. And normally that would be the right thing to do. And everyone's supposed to come to that one answer. A divergent thinker, once a teacher asks a question, comes up with 4 or 5 possibilities in a math class that's not generally considered kosher, which actually Einstein found out, because he's the one that came up with 4 or 5 answers as opposed to the one. and he got thrown out of 2 different schools because he was supposedly a math genius. Well, supposedly is not true. He was a math genius. But, people didn't know. So it was like, okay. So I didn't, so I guess what I'm saying is I should have, and you should go through your proofs with a fine tooth comb. And if you're lucky and you have somebody like Carolyn who, is around and says, let me look at this too, have them go through it with a fine tooth comb, because because any mistakes after that proof is gone, you have to pay for it if you want them to change it. And then it starts costing you more money, and you don't want to do that. Okay, let's see. What else do we need to talk about? I guess, well, what we could also talk about it is, I thought I would tell you about some of the self-publishing that has been around for hundreds of years. Some of the known authors, and this was just some. I mean, I want you to know the list is hundreds of people, but Jane Austen was self-published. Charles Dickens, some of his stuff was published in magazines, and then it would be turned into a book at the end. I think Pickwick Papers and stuff like that. But the Christmas Carol, he just sat down and wrote, and he couldn't get. There weren't very many publishers back then. It was in the 1800s, but none of them would take it. They said, no one's going to read a story about Christmas like this. Who cares about a crusty old man, blah, blah. Okay. So he self-published it. So Christmas Carol is a self-published book by Charles Dickens. William Blake self-published all of his poems, I think. Julia Cameron, who was The Artist's Way, she self-published The Artist's Way, and then she has another book out that just came out last year, and it's self-published too. Pat Conroy is a famous novelist, and he self-published, I think, the first or second of his. Ken Blanchard self-published, I think it's called The 1 Minute something, and he sold millions of copies, and he self-published the second one too. So it's Beatrix Potter, the bunny lady, she was self-published. E.E. Cummings, he sent his poems, a book of poems, into a publisher, and they sent it back. He got rejected, and he got so mad that he self-published it. And then Ben Franklin self-published everything that he wrote. And he wrote a lot of things. I remember going to Pennsylvania, and I love Benjamin Franklin. I was just, and I couldn't believe he wrote all of these things and under all these pseudonyms. And when you look at the pseudonyms, you would laugh because it's very clear they're pseudonyms. But I guess other people just didn't notice it was, but he wrote a lot, and he always self-published everything. Zane Grey, the Western writer, I think he self-published the first couple of books that he wrote. Stephen King self-published the first book that he wrote. Edgar Allan Poe self-published most of what he wrote. Henry David Thoreau self-published most of the books he wrote. Mark Twain self-published Huckleberry Finn. And because it's still too hot to handle. It's one on the banned book list, for God's sakes. But people were very, if you look at it closely at a kind of a layer kind of view, Mark Twain scrutinized religion, and he scrutinized slavery and all of the issues that are still hot topics. And no publisher would touch it with a 10-foot pole. So he self-published it. And look, it's taught in schools all over the country. And then who else? Walt Whitman, he self-published all of his works. I wrote that down someplace, but I don't know where it is. Sorry. And then this is just like a modern person that I just found out was self-published is Mel Robbins. And she's really interesting, actually. She's very learning disabled. She has learning disabilities. She's hyperactive, and yet she's a brilliant speaker. She has followers all over the world. She tells a story about she has a new book out that's called the high five. It's called, high five. If you high five yourself in the mirror in the morning early, like you brush your teeth and then you go high five to the mirror. It's like you're telling your brain, let's have a good day. And it shifts from all the criticism and the things that you could be saying when you look in the mirror and go, oh, I've got more wrinkles. What's wrong with me? It doesn't do that. It shifts the brain and says, let's be upbeat. So that's a good thing. But this book was the one before that. And I think it's called the 5-second rule, which is, when you're trying to shift yourself out of someplace, you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, so she had this book, and she had done everything she was supposed to do around self-publishing it, and she really put a lot of energy into it, and her husband really helped her and all of that. And then what happened was, what happened was that she told her, she sent out emails telling all of her group, okay, go in and buy the book, it's there. And pretty soon she started getting a bunch of emails back saying, Amazon says it's out of stock. And so she was just excited. She thought they sold them all. They hadn't sold them all. And what had happened was she started to realize very quickly that because when she went and she called the printer and she said, I think we're gonna have to print more books. It says that, he said, no, they haven't sold them all. What's happened is when they get a lot of sales all at once, a lot of times they will put it out of stock just to make sure they're not all bogus sales, somebody trying to like push it through or whatever. And it took her 2 weeks to figure that out. But in the process, there is a good thing that happened. Her husband, and she said she did it on it's a fluke. Her husband made her do an audible of the book, and they put it in when they put the printed versions in. And so when you go on Amazon, you'll see, the hardcover and the Kindle weren't available. And so what was available was the Audible. So all those people that couldn't get the book went and got her Audible, and she got this huge check from Audible, and she is now one of the Audible's representatives, as being one of the best-selling Audible people, because people couldn't get the book, so they got it on the Audible first. So anyway, so I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so we did talk about you write your book, you edit your book, have someone else edit your book, get your book cover designed by a professional, get your book formatted by a professional, get a good marketing plan and follow it. For marketing, I would highly recommend, Carolyn, go tell people about marketing.
Well, I was not prepared for that. You did mention a couple of marketing people that you recommend that people follow.
Yes, yeah. I recommend Tim Grahl, and he's at booklaunch.com, and he has tons. He has a lot of free information, but he has tons of good information. He has a good way to develop a platform, and he honestly is one of the best marketers I have ever seen. And then, of course, and then there's Derek Murphy, and Tim Grahl is spelled T-I-M, Tim, and then it's Grahl, and it's at booklaunch.com. And Derek Murphy is Derek. I don't think it's CK, I think it's K. It's Derek Murphy, Murphy. And his
URL is creativeindie.com.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say, okay. And she put it in the chat so you can see that and write it down. But he's all over the place. He also has free Facebook things. He has a Facebook group. He has a marketing group. He's got other websites. I mean, he's got a great YouTube channel that talks a lot about different skill sets that you should have when you're writing. He has great blogs. So he and Tim are wonderful. Now I have to tell you, my favorite, it's backwards. Well, okay, it says, this is marketing. You can't be seen until you learn to see. Seth Godin. As you can see, it's up backwards, but see little Seth Godin, see his face right there? And I'm going to read the back of this because it's interesting because he never makes big runs of books. He makes short runs of books, and he only does it. And he also runs, I don't know if he runs it anymore, but he's connected to a thing called Akimbo, AIKIMBO. And could you look up akimbo.com, see if you could tell him what it is, how to spell it?
Yeah.
But they have all kinds of writing courses and everything. It's wonderful. Okay, this is what he says. People like us do things like this. This is the chance you've been waiting for, the opportunity to bring work you care about to people eager to engage with it, pay you for it, and talk about it. I believe that the only way to make a difference is to truly see and understand the people you seek to influence. Once you're fully engaged, they will be happy to help you spread the word. This book will change the questions you ask, the things you notice, and most of all, the work that you're able to do. It will help you make things better by making better things. Your work matters. Make a ruckus. And some of the like, it's just a completely different marketing thing. There's tons of things. Like he talks about, here's some of the chapters. It says, chapter 1, not mass, not spam, not shameful. Chapter 2, the marketer learns to see. Chapter 3, marketing changes people through stories. I like that. Connections and experience, which was what I was telling you about when you go to conferences or workshops or anything like that. You're connecting with other human beings, and I have to tell you, it's probably, if I had to give myself, I have a list of all these different things I do, but I would say that mostly I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories. I love to create stories. I love to write stories. I like to listen to stories. I like movies. I like books, all that. And then what's interesting is that he also talks about what he calls the smallest viable market, that people are always looking for, what's the right word? If they're looking for someplace where they can sell 1 million books. Well, the reality is that there aren't very many people that are going to sell 1 million books. And you might sell consistently, you could sell 10,000 books to even the same people over and over again if they're different books, is what I'm trying to say, as opposed to, then there are places that, what's that guy, Ken Blanchard, he sold over 1 million books because we all want to know how to do something in 3 days instead of 5. Why not? But I think that you would find Seth Godin, and Seth Godin, I didn't tell you what his was. It's sethgodin.com. He's very, did you find Akimbo for them?
I did. That's the name of his podcast, is Akimbo, AKIMBO. And I put the link in there, but it's Akimbo, a podcast from Seth Godin. So
right,
I'm sure the website will take people there.
And then there's also workshops. Can you type in a thing that, let's see if maybe it's back here, because
it might be on his book, his website, sethgodin.com.
Well, I think he doesn't, I don't think he's connected to it anymore, is the reason I saw it.
Oh, okay, let me look.
So that's why I was, okay, well, I'll read a sample marketing worksheet from the back while she's looking for Akimbo. Or never mind, you guys look for Akimbo, how's that? A simple marketing worksheet. This is just, okay. What is it? Who's it for? What is it for? What is the worldview of the audience that you are seeking to reach? What are they afraid of? What story will you tell? And is it true? What change are you seeking to make? How will it change their status? How will you reaching the early adopters and neophilics, I don't know how to say that word, but it means people that are new. Why will they tell their friends? What will they tell their friends? Where's the network effect that will prepare this forward? And what asset are you building? And most important of all, are you proud of it? I think,
Yeah.
Are you proud of it? I guess what I'm trying to say is don't put something out in the world. Writing a book is a wonderful experience. Publishing a book is a wonderful experience, but it's really hard. It's not, it's, for people, I mean, you just basically you do everything that the big publishers do. It's just that you're having to do it with just a couple of people as opposed to, and I think that that's their problem right now in terms of money and things like that, because one of the biggest problems with big publishers right now is unless you can guarantee that you're going to sell a lot of books because people already know your name, they really, A, probably aren't going to publish your book, and B, if they do publish your book, you aren't going to be getting any big advances and you aren't going to be getting very much money. So just know that, and that's okay. If the rest of this just sounds like it's too hard, it's not a big deal. I also want to be sure that, because Carolyn, who's sitting there, will probably be very upset with me if I don't. On my website, we have tons of classes that you can click on, right? Let's see if I can go through them. What do you think?
Yeah.
We have the one that's connected to this, which I have to say is probably my favorite, and it's the self-publishing path. And it's really extraordinary in person because you get to put up with me for like all day and you get lunch in the middle. But because of COVID, we haven't done very many of those. But we're starting, I think, we have one in September, don't we? One in September and maybe in October.
Sorry, yes, September 17th is the next.
Okay, all right.
In-person
one.
Yeah.
But then we also have it online, and it's, the good part about the online courses is that you get to literally have all the information. And if you're like me and you want to go back and find out, okay, what did she say? And what is this? And where is that? You can listen to it as often as you want, which is, really a good thing. It's fun. We also have, let's see, Build Your Story. That's the first one, right? The second one is
Make Your World Come Alive.
Make Your World. We're going to let Carolyn do that. Okay, Carolyn, tell me about the courses that we have online.
Yeah. So there's Make Your World Come Alive, where you can really get into characters and setting and descriptions and learn how to really make your writing really sparkle. And then there's People Leap Off the Page is the next class. And that's really focused right on creating three-dimensional characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we have the advanced creative writing workshops, sculpting a memoir. And do you want to talk about memoirs? Because they're similar but different from novel writing.
Oh, well, right. Because what it is that memoirs, people mistakenly think that you're just telling somebody's life story. I'm going to tell my life story. It's a memoir. And that's not what a memoir is. A memoir is like a snapshot of one part of your life. And, which is interesting because like Mark Twain, actually, we'll go back to him. One of the things he said was, there's a lot of him in Huckleberry Finn. Now you have to figure out who it is. Maybe he's Huckleberry. I don't know, but so other than that, it's we go through the course and it's fun.
Yeah, you still have to be a good storyteller to tell.
You have absolutely you have to be a good storyteller but that's what the courses are for, because learning how to be a storyteller is, it's, for me, I think that's part of what they call archetypes. I just love to tell stories, and when I start writing, they just kind of come out, and it's good. But my grandchildren say I tell stories too. They'll sit down and say, so what, tell us about this and when did this happen and blah, blah, blah. And they won't want to know that for very long. So I think it's fun to do. Okay,
Right.
what comes after the memoir?
And then there's also adventures in novel writing. So that's, practical, emotional, psychological strategies
Mhm.
to help you
That
finish your
one-
book.
Well, that one also has a lot of archetypes in it too.
Hmm,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that one, and is there another one right after
There's
that?
one more, creating brilliant alive characters.
Right, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
archetypes in the last four of
Advanced.
how to use the archetypes, what they are, and adventures in the adventures one is packed full of adventures of novel writing is packed full of archetypes and how stories fall into a certain way. It's like people think it's funny because people think that when you write something, it's just going to be, you just write it and then you have it typed and then it's done. But there's actually a formula. You have to have a plot. You have to have a hero in like a whatever, unless you're doing nonfiction, and that's just another whole genre. That's just fine. It's great. Okay, so that's all of our, oh, and then of course, if you're really interested in Reiki or in past lives, you can also get those because I have those too. But I don't teach those online. Right.
Right. And so all the writing courses are available online, and a few of them are now you're starting to author in person.
I am.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And let's see, I have no idea what time it is. Do you?
12:47 in Colorado. So it's
Ah,
been about 45 minutes.
okay. Well, thank you very much for showing up to our webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at synchron, synchron at csd.net. Yeah. And in the subject line, please put webinar question, so that because I get hundreds of emails every day, and you don't want me to say, whoops, because sometimes I skip emails and people will go, I emailed you and I didn't hear back. And then I feel really bad. But thank you very much for joining us. And I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Okay. It's still recording. Stop. Wait.
The top left, I think you can click on recording and then say stop recording.
Okay.